But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone and he's never coming back. I would have liked to have heard this story before Kevin passed away, because I guarantee you I would have told him about it. So that's what I do.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, and I'm passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so that they can build their most beautiful future. Sometimes the stories we envision for ourselves and our loved ones can change in an instant. Our guest today is Barry Adkins, author, speaker, and father of Kevin. Kevin died of alcohol poisoning at the age of 18, the day he moved out of his parents' home. Barry has been on a mission to educate young people about the dangers of binge drinking ever since Kevin's death. Barry Adkins walked from Arizona to Montana with his son's ashes in his backpack, sharing Kevin's story along the way with students and educators. Barry has written a book, Kevin's Last Walk, a father's final journey with his son, and continues to speak publicly to spread awareness of the risk of binge drinking. Barry, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your and Kevin's story.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Dr. Shafer.
It is my pleasure to have you here, and I am so appreciative of how you are making such an impact on children and educators' lives by sharing Kevin's story. To start off, could you introduce us, tell us more about your son, Kevin?
So unfortunately, he was a lot like his old man. He was not a very good student, honestly. He was actually flunking his English class in March of his senior year in high school, and he needed it for graduation, right? And he would always say the same thing every other kid says, right? Yeah, Dad, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. But I didn't trust him. So I called the school, talked to the teacher, asked all those questions, was he there today? Did he turn in his assignments? Because one of his quirks was he would actually do an assignment and just never turn it in. I never understood that. But the teacher knew what to do to motivate him. So she would go back into class and report back to him in front of all of his buddies that his daddy called to check on him. And then I get the phone call, right? Knock it off. Stop calling my teachers. And I'd say, look, dude, you know what to do here. Just take care of it. But he did get his grades up, and he did graduate. And after the high school graduation ceremony, he gave me a hug and whispered, "Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad."
That's so beautiful. How did you feel in that moment? I know as a parent, sometimes you can feel like you're badgering your kids and they're telling you to
Oh, you're
stop, but
tormenting him.
but you know that you're doing it for their good. How did it feel in that moment when he said that to you?
It felt good, but I didn't understand the profoundness of it until, 6 weeks later, right? I mean, it was neat. I was the only one that heard it, right? He whispered it to me. But as a parent, that's your job, right? It's the same way I kind of look at people say, wow, look at what you've done since he passed away. And I say, it's the least I could do. I don't see it that way. It's like, that's your job.
Yeah, absolutely. So going forward from that impactful moment where he'd achieved this life event, he graduated from high school even after there was a bit of a struggle. And then he was kind of moving into this new phase of his life. Tell me what led up to his death, what those experiences were for you as a family as he was trying to seek that independence and transition into the adult world.
So basically, after he graduated from high school, he got a job working for an electrician, making good money. And I agreed to co-sign a loan because he wanted to buy a new truck. And for your audience, I made him give me 3 months worth of insurance payments and car payments before I was going to co-sign that loan, right? Because I didn't want to be on the hook for it again. It's your deal, not mine. And I'm hoping that he'll find a truck from a private party. I'll go down to the credit union, sign papers, and be out of there in 5 minutes. He found one at a dealership. And for your audience, anybody that works at a dealership, I apologize, but I just have a healthy dislike for that process, right? Because I know what they're going to do when I walk in there, right? And so I go down and sit down at the dealership. The first thing that financial guy said to me was, how about some life insurance? I'm like, oh, here we go. I said, look, I don't need any life insurance. My wife will do just fine. If something happens to me. And he said, I'm not talking about your son. I'm talking about your son, not you. And I rather indignantly told him that 18-year-old boys don't need life insurance because they don't die. But I was wrong. They do die. He wouldn't live long enough to make a single payment on that truck. So he gets the new truck. He's got money in the bank. The next thing he wanted to do is move out, right? And I did my best to discourage him because honestly, we really never had any problems with him. His high school principal didn't even know who he was. But I didn't have any luck talking him out of it. So one day he came into our living room and he sat down in this brown chair that looks out over our backyard. And he started talking about how his life was finally beginning and he was going to do it. He was going to move out. He then, a couple weeks later, started the process of moving out. He threw a bed, a TV, and a dresser in the back of his new truck. His friend Craig came over and helped him do that. But I remember him coming back in after he did that, and he walked into our living room and he said that he wasn't going to take his toothbrush with him. He'd be back tomorrow and get it. I walked out front with him like I normally do, gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and to be careful. Watched him drive away. It was the last time I saw him alive. That night, his friends decided to throw a little housewarming party for him. Started with a keg of beer, moved on to shots. He actually left a voicemail for his sister that night, talking about how drunk he was and how much fun they were having. He passed out a short time after he left that voicemail. The people at the party laid him in his bed on his side in case he vomited. But the party was still going on. He actually went in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out because he's just passed out, right? His buddy Craig was worried about him and kept going back in to check on him. Around 4 a.m., calls started coming into 911. The first calls were difficulty breathing. Next calls were not breathing. My son died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed. The next morning was Sunday morning. My wife and I are sitting around drinking coffee, talking about what we're going to do or not do that day, right? Just a normal Sunday morning. At about 8:30 in the morning, the doorbell rings. And we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company. And I open the door and I see two police officers and somebody in plain clothes at the front door. That should have been a big red flag, right? It should have been. But I'm that guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. I actually joked with them as they came in, thinking this had to have something to do with a dog or a parked car. I had nothing. They didn't laugh at any of my jokes. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of that brown chair. That brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before and talked about how his life was finally beginning. He said there'd been an accident. Your son is dead. We asked who, because we have a number of children. They said it was Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license, because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope. You're holding out hope that this is all a big mistake. You have misspelled the last name. Get out of here. You need to be 3 streets over, or at least next door, right? Any place but my place. But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone and he's never coming back. One was finally asked what had happened, and the officer said that the probable cause of death was alcohol poisoning. We found out later that that is indeed what happened. His blood alcohol content was 0.34%.
And for our listeners, if they're not aware, technically for alcohol intoxication, that's a 0.08. We often think about that for intoxication when driving, but that's also a metric for alcohol poisoning and intoxication in general.
Yes, yes.
Something I've heard you speak, Barry, and I know they're only words, but I do want to just extend my profound sorrow for you and condolences for your family for the
Thank you.
loss of Kevin. Something I've heard you speak to about that night that I know from hearing you discuss it rocked you as a parent. And I think also is really important for our listeners to hear, to understand the process of the experience when young people have delved into this mistake. They've made the mistake of drinking alcohol and then drinking too much alcohol, and they know they're going to get in trouble, and maybe one of their friends is not looking okay. The thought processes that they have, how often things can be put off until it's really too late. Can you share what you learned about your son's experience that night and his friends, and how you've come to terms with that, and also what you want to share with young people who, a proportion of our young people are going to find themselves in this situation, and what would you want them to know about it to try to stop that process before it's too late, like it was for your son, Kevin?
Well, really, the big thing there for me that I tell everybody is if you're ever in that situation, think about Kevin's buddy, Craig. It's a night he will never forget. And if you're thinking, well, I'd probably be the first person to ever call 911 or take someone to the emergency room because of alcohol poisoning, that's simply not the case. It happens all the time. And life can be full of things where you regret things. And for me, in that moment, you got to take a chance. I actually told this story at a school up in North Phoenix, and I got a call actually it was an email a couple weeks later. There had been a party where there was a lot of drinking going on. There was a student that passed out, and one of the other students had just heard Kevin's story. He wanted to call 911. The other students didn't want him to call 911. So he put that student that was passed out in his car, drove him to an urgent care facility. Who called 911? They airbagged him out and saved his life.
What an incredible impact you made on that person's life, saving their life by sharing Kevin's story. It's incredible. How does that make you feel when you hear that?
Well, there's a level of satisfaction, but for me, this phrase, something very good will come from it, that might have been it. I don't know. I do know that my mission in life is probably to spend the rest of my life telling this story. Because you never know when some words spoken to a student will change their lives. And there's been other students I've read. One of the schools has them write thank you notes, and one of the students said, I had no idea this could happen. I didn't realize how serious this stuff can be, and I'm not going to do that. So, and sometimes you hear about those things, but sometimes for me, I'm not sure I'm supposed to know about them. Am I
Hmm.
supposed to know about them? I don't know. I just know that
Hmm.
uh, when I get in front of a group of students, um, you can hear a pin drop in the room when I talk to them. I don't know if it's the grandfather effect. Might be. I don't know. But I know that they're listening because the first thing I tell them is, I'm just here to tell you a story. I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their life, right? I'm 2 generations apart from you. And I think that's something that is important for people to understand. I'm just here to tell you a story.
Thought that it evokes in me is that you are, because of what you've experienced in part, you are doing the brave thing and talking about something that many people aren't willing to talk to kids about. We're willing to say, don't drink. And we're willing to say what the big consequences will be if you do drink, right?
Right.
But we don't necessarily go deep into explaining the why and the how for a variety of reasons, maybe educational, maybe emotional. Maybe it's something that we feel that we can't share those gritty details with kids. Kids are really smart and they're going to learn these things on their own, and that's exactly the way that we don't want them to learn them. And that's why it's so important, the work that you're doing, going and having these honest conversations with kids across the country.
And honestly, Dr. Shafer, I still believe I'm not the right guy to do this. Um, it's funny how life turns out because I don't go out and socialize. A good weekend for me is when the vehicle never leaves the driveway, right? I don't get out and do that stuff. And as I say, if God would have told me 25 years ago, okay, here's what's going to happen, this is what you're going to do, I would have said, yeah, why don't you pick somebody else? That's that's not for me. I'm not a public speaker. I'm an engineer by trade, and I did have to get up and speak occasionally, right? Sharing some technology or something. But um, in general, most people would agree, public speaking terrifies you, right? It's just not something anybody really likes to do. Although I have to say, after you've done it, 400 or 500 times, you at least know the drill. The students often write me thank you notes, and then I go through them. And I don't know if I sent you that, but yeah, there were pages of really cool comments. But I want to get to where they can just scan a QR code and do it there.
And you give students the time and space to write something down. And something I like to do with kind of older students, which is who you're working with too, giving them the opportunity to not only write it down, but then put their thoughts in a little bowl and then pull it out and read it together. There's something magical about that experience. I think we don't give enough weight, even though, like, yes, you can argue it's such a narcissistic society we have now, social media, all this stuff, everyone's opinions matter too much, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, though, we don't really ask each other, how do you feel? And then talk about how we feel and then open a discussion and see where that leads us. We don't really do that much. And so I think there's something so powerful about giving kids the opportunity, especially with something like what you talk about, it's such a risky, taboo topic for them to discuss. Because again, like I mentioned in response to your story about wanting to share your son's friends' experiences, kids are going to find themselves in these situations. They are, whether we
Yeah.
like it or not, they are.
Yeah.
So we can be so afraid of that happening that we say, no, 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 I don't want to talk about that because you're a good kid. You're never going to do that. Or we can say, good kids make mistakes. I want you to have basically the rails on the road so that at exit A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, you know what your options are along the way. And the first opportunity you have to get off, that you get off and come back. Because the further away you get, the harder that's going to be.
Yeah, and they need time to think about, uh, you know, as you mentioned, to kind of digest it. I don't know if the QR code will work because honestly, I think if you'd asked them to give their feedback on the spot, it would have been pretty short. Right? Hey,
Mm.
thanks for coming in, which is all they were supposed to be doing. But some of these were a full page long, and I tried to parse them down, but they all, I mean, there were students that said, this is the third time I've heard this story. It still gets me, and I learned something new from it all three times.
For our listeners, I had some issue with my camera. If you're watching this audio visual style, you see that my camera has changed a bit. And so Barry and I were off camera discussing the conversations that he has with students when he does his speaking engagements at schools, et cetera. And I would like to keep this in the show, even though there were some off camera discussions, because I think it's so important. So he was talking about the tools that he uses with education and switching from the way he was getting feedback from students to now using a QR code and wondering, okay, how is that going to work? What's that going to look with the feedback? And at the end of the day, I think it really displays something that we really need to be doing when we're having these. One, we just need to have these conversations with kids and students, but two, figure out the way, not the way we want to tell the story necessarily, but what's a way we can share the story that they can access it, digest it, learn from it, not feel shamed, not feel blamed, not feel afraid to ask for help if they need it in these situations, but actually feel empowered with the tools to make decisions that could genuinely save their own or someone else's life.
Yeah, and understanding the impact, um, you know, and this has happened a few times where I've gotten emails or letters from parents because the student came home and told them about it. And so that gives me hope that they are listening. Um, One of the things I've learned through the years about speaking, basically anywhere, but especially with students, is don't get up there and say a bunch of stuff that sounds contrived or fake. Uh, People see through it, students especially see through it, right? And in my presentation, um, I'm going to take you to that night. And as a friend of mine said, he goes, "You didn't tell me before I watched your presentation that you were going to punch me in the gut and then you're going to pat me on the back and tell me you're going to be okay." That's how he described it. But it is. It's a punch in the gut, and I think that's. I was told years ago. Um, I was working with NotMyKid.org. They're the organization that sponsored the walk. We haven't gotten to that yet, but one of the people there was helping me with it. I wrote it all out and kind of went through it with them, and she said, "No, no, no, no. Take me to that night. I want to know exactly what was going on. I want to be sitting in the living room when you get that knock on the door. Walk me into that funeral home with you. What did you see?" Those kinds of things, because those are the things that stick with people, right? And there's nothing contrived about it. That's what happened.
And by sharing Kevin's story honestly and vulnerably, it really helps to share his story in such a way that it can make that impact. Like you said, being contrived and being kind of above it all, it doesn't connect with kids. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't have connected with Kevin. From the stories I've heard you talk about, his school time, right? It wouldn't have connected with Kevin either. And so that's the metric when we have these really important conversations with kids, which is what this discussion we're having is all about how can we open these meaningful conversations? Or if we're not in a place with our child that we feel that we're the right person, how could we, for example, have them watch the documentary that you filmed, right? To again be an opener for the conversation, an opener for the educational piece, and then go from there to make changes to help keep your child safe and even bring it into your school system. There are so many opportunities. Now, when you were processing this profound loss of your son, you did not, after a time, get stuck. You really leaned into your purpose, how you're going to turn your grief into something that would keep Kevin's memory alive and also help other kids. Talk to me about that last walk that you took with Kevin and how it changed your mindset on how you wanted to move forward after his death.
So I guess I should describe, let's start with purpose. Um, let's be clear. I was angry with God. I was pissed at him, right? Because, and I don't think it's unusual for any parent to say, take me and let my son live. And I told him. And a couple days later, this is a little hard for me to describe, but I'm going to do my best. I was laying in bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was wide awake. And I felt like somebody had just walked in the room. Like, you know how sometimes you feel that like somebody walked in behind you or something? Um, and then there was a light that I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. And the message was that something very good would come from this and that Kevin didn't suffer. It wasn't spoken to me, and it's hard to describe. I'm not, again, it wasn't spoken to me, but I knew it. I didn't get to cross-examine, say, wait, what do you mean? What am I supposed to do? And I, as I tell everybody, it's not that it made everything okay, but it gave me that mission. You know, that word you used. It gave me that mission that I'm supposed to go make this happen. How do I do that? As part of that process, then I have to go pick up his ashes, right? And I walk in the door, the funeral home. They've got pictures on the wall. They're playing music in the background. They take me into an office, sit me down in a big, comfortable chair with a desk in front of me. And a funeral director walks in and sets an urn down in front of me. An urn that holds all the remains of the kid that I burped. I changed his diapers. I coached all of his sports. I taught him to shoot a gun, swing a golf club, all of that kind of stuff. All the remains of him were sitting in an urn in front of me. There's one thing I knew at that point, and that was I didn't want to be a victim. Because the world doesn't need any more victims. We've got plenty already. The world needs people who take something bad and they make something very good come from it. And I thought about what I would hope somebody else would do. And for me, and I knew it that day that I was going to get out and tell the story. Not for the money, because there is no money in the world that'll fix it. I just wanted to try to make something very good come from this. And in that process, now we have his ashes. What are we going to do about that? I grew up in Kalispell, Montana. Kevin had been there a number of times and always talked about wanting to buy a ranch up there. So we decided to take his ashes to Montana. The normal thing to do is to put them in your car and drive there, but I decided to put them in my backpack and walk there. About 1,400 miles from Gilbert, Arizona to Kalispell, Montana, and tell the story. Because I would have liked to have heard this story before Kevin passed away, because I guarantee you I would have told him about it. So that's what I do.
Now, that's the macro view of
Hmm.
this journey. So we've had another really inspiring individual on the show, Brooke McIntosh. She's in the final stages of a run around Australia that she's doing to raise money and awareness for mental health. And one thing that she's learned from, she'll be on the road for 6 months, literally on the road on foot. And something that she's shared is the profound experience one has cognitively when you're alone with your thoughts, when you're doing all that exercise, there's all that quiet, there's all that space for reflection. And, how she would just be moved to tears at times for no reason, seemingly
Yeah.
because it would just wash over her. And I'm thinking about you. That's something that came to my mind, thinking about you on this journey, having recently lost your son with his ashes in your backpack on this long journey alone with your thoughts and the road and the elements and the little aches and pains that were coming along with it, because it was really physically challenging, but also
Yes.
mentally challenging. What was that experience like for you mentally? And did it change your mindset, the way that you think about and respond to challenges and to others moving forward?
So, a few thoughts there. I did not wear any headphones on the walk. As you said, was her name Brooke, I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you let your mind go and let it go wherever it's going to go. Maybe sometimes it's about Kevin, sometimes it's about the scenery, sometimes uh, it's about the weather. Um, were there aches and pains? Yeah, I had plantar fasciitis. I had a huge blister. I had ingrown toenails. I had a knee that was sore, a back that was sore. Um, but it's interesting in life. There's a metaphor here because for me, one of the common questions I got asked is, "Did you ever think about quitting?" The answer to that is no. But I was only about 200 miles into this. I wasn't even to Flagstaff, Arizona. And I had a day that was rough. It was windy. It was rainy. It was a big hill that I had scouted the route, but I didn't see it. It was about 2,000 feet elevation gain. There was just a lot of things that went south about it. But the problem I was having was that I was thinking about, I got another 1,200 miles to go, right? It's a long ways. I'm not even out of the state yet, right? And I'm struggling. But I changed my mindset. And I think it was a God thing. Um, I stopped thinking about that 1,200 miles. And I started thinking about walking another 3 miles, meeting my wife, Bev, and taking a break. Let me walk 3 more miles. And then I'll see what I can do from there. And it's a great metaphor for life, right? Because there's that big challenge out there, 1,200 miles. Yeah, that's a long ways to go. I don't think I would ever try to do that. But can you walk 3 more miles and then see where you go from there? In life, people look at challenges ahead of them and I think, man, I don't think I can't go through 6 years of college, or I don't think I can ever get to that point in my career where I could do that. But are those the baby steps there? Because one of the other things, as I tell the story, there's three things they take away, but one of them that comes to mind in this discussion is adversity. Bad stuff happens to everybody. It's part of life. The way you respond to it is going to define your life. It's not a might. It will.
Mistakes will happen. You'll find
Yes.
yourself on that train. You've missed exit A, B, C, D. And to bring it back, I think you can look at it on the macro level as a life lesson because it applies to everything. To bring it back to alcohol, and if you have a child or you are a person who's struggling with alcohol, and you're already maybe binge drinking, or you're already drinking a little bit with friends, you've already made these choices. It's okay that you've made a mistake. It's also okay to challenge that mistake and to start saying, to be critical with the situation, is this what I want for myself? Right? To give yourself the grace to accept that it's a mistake, because accepting that it's a mistake is the first step to choosing something different, and not saying, well, I'm already binge drinking with my friends on the weekend. I'm 17 or 18. It's illegal. I can't talk to my parents because I'll get in trouble. Most of us would want to know, as parents, actually, let us help you.
Yeah.
It's not too late. And making mistakes is truly a part of life. And so it's okay to take that stock, and it's never too late to take the next exit, even if it's literally, if we're down to TUV, like, okay, but those are still exits. We can come back and use the tools that you have around you.
Yeah.
Take that space for yourself too. Take that space, take that walk, even if it's just one walk, the time and space to have that clarity to think about your life. It's so many opportunities in life that we miss by not connecting with one another and not giving ourselves the space and time to have those conversations with ourselves and with the people that we love.
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind as you said that about that space thing. Um, you know, I everybody knows they're supposed to have quiet time, but I was actually out in the Bob Marshall Wilderness up in Montana with my uncle. We backpacked in there, and we were sitting on top of a pretty good sized hill, just sitting there, just enjoying it. And I remember whispering to him, "Man, it's quiet up here." And he said, "Yeah, and it's got a lot to say." And I've never forgotten that, because that quiet time is where you have the opportunity to think clearly, right? And, as far as mistakes go, forgiveness is another part of the process, right? For me, it was easy for me to forgive the guys at the party because this was Kevin's choice, right? It was his decision. And it was easy for me to forgive my kid. But there's one person that was pretty hard to forgive, and that was me. And that was a big part of that 1,400-mile journey, to find a way to forgive myself. And I have. I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance are just going to lead to one thing: destruction, right? Forgiveness leads to healing. And sometimes, as you alluded to, the most important person you need to forgive is yourself. We all make those mistakes. We miss that exit. It's the way you handle it that matters.
For being on that journey of learning to forgive yourself and learning to move through grief. We don't necessarily ever stop grieving, but learning to move through it and with it and have a relationship that's not destructive, as you said, because it's one of shame and blame, but one that is constructive of, what is my mission? How do I want to move forward with this memory and honor? What messages would you want listeners to take home today that they could start applying in their daily lives to really embody the lessons that you've learned? And if they do have young people in their life, that they could share with them as well.
Well, I guess we'll address it at a higher level. I've given you two of the things about adversity and forgiveness, right? But the other one is about decision making. The two most important decisions that you're ever going to make are about drugs and alcohol. It isn't even close. We all know stories, right? You need to educate yourselves about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse, as if your life and the lives of your children depend upon it. It's as simple as that. And people ask me, well, when should I start talking to them about it? Well, the only thing I can tell you is don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah. And that age is going to be different. Be aware of the conversations your kids are having, right? Be wary. Be wary of the conversations they're having in person as well as online. We need to be good stewards of what our children have access to and what they're influenced by. We can't control everything, but we can control creating a safe space for open
Yeah.
conversation and also making sure that we're teaching them boundaries, we're teaching them safety, that we're educating them and empowering them to make choices for themselves, for their health and their safety. And I so appreciate the work that you are doing across the country, working with students, sharing Kevin's story. You also have your wonderful book that's available to readers to share that story too. I'm sure that teachers could do interesting workshops with students and have them reflect on the book as well. So many opportunities to share this story and connect with people. How, Barry, can people best get in contact with you if they're wanting to have you come speak at their school or they're wanting to order the book for their class? What's the best way to do that?
Um, the best way to get a hold of me is on the website. It's kevinslastwalk.com. There's a contact form there. The book is available on Amazon. It's titled Kevin's Last Walk, A Father's Final Journey with His Son. As far as coming to schools and stuff, it just takes someone with some initiative that wants to make something happen. Um, if it's outside of Arizona, to be clear, I only charge expenses. I don't, I'm not looking to make any money at this. I just want to tell the story. Um, I've been to several different states and done it. I've got a lot of stuff in the hopper again this year, but I just want to tell the story. Um, the money part of it, as I alluded to, you know, I'm not interested in becoming rich doing this. That was never, I don't think that's part of something very good will come from this. I think it's being available to do it. I actually already have, in Arizona, one of the high school districts has made this part of their curriculum. Uh, I have a video. If I can't come in person, there's a video uh, and a lesson plan that goes with it. Questions to ask, questions to discuss after they watch the video. Um, it's better in person, I think. At least that's what I've been told. Um, but the video is there. So if you don't think you can get me there, it can still be used. It's part of the curriculum in that school district to watch the video and go through it. And there's no reading, writing, or arithmetic in it. It's about critical thinking, which, as we know, is a challenge.
It's a challenge, but it is the most important skill that we can help our
Yes,
children learn how to master. And so I think that has much a greater impact on their future and
it
their
does.
everyday lives than arithmetic does, as important as it is. I think that that is an incredible gift that you are making available to schools. If anyone has questions, please contact Barry through his website, or we'd be happy to have you send comments, questions to our social media here on Talks with Dr. Shafer and work to connect you. I'm so grateful to you, Barry, for being on Talks with Dr. Shafer and sharing Kevin's story with us. We made sure to have a cowboy hat here today in memory of Kevin because I know he loved a black cowboy hat.
Yes, he did.
And we'll have pictures for everyone to see up on the show as well, so they can see
They
Kevin
can
in his.
also contact me on Facebook. It's Kevin's Last Walk. Um, that's the website has links to those podcasts, but I post them all on the Facebook page. I just want to tell the story. Um, yeah, your students will not. It's something you won't regret doing. It just. I know it sounds like I'm too old to do it, but believe it or not, they do listen.
They will listen if we share this important messaging to them, and if we connect with them, as you mentioned earlier, on a real, authentic level where we're not there to tell them what to do. We're just here to give them the information. We know they're
Yeah.
smart. We know they're going to make decisions. They can't make good decisions without the information. So we can't be afraid to tell them about the realities of life. We need to arm them with information. And that's what you're doing with Kevin's story and with your work you're doing now. And I so appreciate you. And I'm so grateful that you came on the show.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on the show, Dr. Shafer.
Thank you, Barry. And thank you so much to our storytellers that were here. I hope you learned something from today's episode. I know that I'm so appreciative for Barry sharing Kevin's story and also understanding more about how we can share that story in classrooms around the country and the world so that kids are safer and they can work on that critical thinking piece, because we know that is so incredibly important for today and beyond for their development. Storytellers, as always, until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.